This is Fallout 3. We're on Xbox Series X taking a look at this epic large-scale RPG experience from Bethesda, entering the Wasteland and exploring what the game has to offer. What we're getting here is a 4K resolution, 30 FPS, and no auto HDR support enabled on this one. So today I'm joined by...
Hey guys, this is the Pink Illusion.
And we'll be talking about the game and going over the experience, doing this online. Mitchell's a busy guy. So with that... open up the experience, tell us about Fallout 3. What is this game?
This game is my favorite game. Just flat out, this is my favorite game. It is so open world. It's dreary but yet beautiful at the same time. I can say that one of my favorite gaming experiences ever is stepping out of the vault for the first time and seeing the Wasteland. It's an amazing open world RPG. You have so much stuff you can do, a massive story, and so many small side things that I've played this game at least 20, maybe 30 times, and I still discover something new every time I play.
Sounds like an expansive offering. I mean, I too am aware of this title, and I'm sure many are as well. But, we do talk about these from the standpoint of maybe somebody that is looking at playing this for the first time. Tell us what's the gist of the start of the story, and a little bit about how this story kind of changes potentially in how you play it.
Yeah, so the start of the story is you're living in Vault 101, and Vault 101 is described as a vault that no one ever enters, no one ever leaves. You're born in the vault, you die in the vault. And it's you and your father, who's played by the amazing Liam Neeson. Your father leaves. He gets out of the vault, and it causes a chain of events that requires you to also leave the vault. So, knowing all of that, you get out of the vault, and you start having to go on the main quest storyline of looking for your father. Along the way, there's a really good karma system that plays into things, where your actions basically determine various points of the game. And again, I don't want to spoil things, but the most popular one is usually the megaton bomb, basically going, are you going to blow up the bomb, or are you going to leave it behind? There's two very different storylines depending on what you do, and it's very interesting to see. But it can fully affect not only the game, your gameplay, but it can actually affect right up to the very last boss encounter, the very last character encounter at the end of the game, like your karma system. So there is a lot of stuff riding on the decisions you make, which is something good because this game came out in 2008, so it was very ahead of its time, I would feel.
Yeah.
So, Megaton for you, crater or a thriving city?
I like Megaton quite a bit. I personally I have blown it up, but I never like to blow it up. Megaton has too many good things in there for me.
So when looking at the game, there's the element of player creation. Could you tell us a bit about the options for the type of individual you make and how your experiences on the Wasteland impact the style of your character?
Besides the karma system, there is still the very nice design of your character. Like, hey, what do I look like? What am I kind of specializing in? And it introduced a perk system, which was not super common in games at the time. The perk system basically varies wildly from allowing you to have extra skill points to every single time you shoot somebody, you automatically gain a buff, or anytime you talk to a female character, you get much better stats for a certain amount of time. Just small buffs that play into the game and change the gameplay quite a bit, causing variation essentially. It was a little bit ahead of its time because this game did come out in 2008, and until then, a lot of games that had been coming out were more so linear FPS shooters, which was more popular. And then games like Fallout started dropping. Oblivion came out at a very same time, and so did Mass Effect. So those games kind of created a little niche of RPGs getting a resurgence. On top of that as well, there's also a slight customization where you can build and design weapons. Now, it's not the same as Fallout 4 if you're familiar with Fallout 4, which most people would be, but it's not to that extent. I think there's a grand total of 21 weapons you can make, but they're cool. They're almost specialty weapons. Whenever you build them, you get an advantage in the Wasteland. I can guarantee that. Some of them are very basic, just laser weapons, and other ones are you can shoot a teddy bear across the land and blow somebody up with it. It varies quite a bit.
Teddy bear weapons, always a blast. Now, chatting about the world, where does Fallout 3 take place? And, tell us a little bit about some of the cool spots you can visit, whether those are more in the mind or perhaps just out in the open wasteland. And aside from that, also just a favorite spot that you have in the game.
The DLCs take place in a couple other areas, including Pittsburgh, Anchorage, Alaska, various places around the U.S. But the main core game takes place in the capital wasteland, which is Washington, D.C., which took 3 to 4 direct nuclear hits. And so you get to visit some really iconic locations that I guarantee you would be familiar with. You get to go down to Capitol Hill. You get to go down to the Washington Monument. I might not be calling it the right thing, but Washington Monument. The Pentagon is a major game location. There's the entire downtown Capitol, Washington Capitol, which a lot of people actually say is quite accurate for what it actually is in real life, which I think was really cool for Bethesda to do. Like, they made it quite accurate. And on top of that, though, you try to explore the upper ground, but a lot of the ground is actually going subway systems, which interconnect almost the whole map, honestly. You get a lot of distance traveled when you're going through those subway systems, and it's very effective to get around the map. It's a really cool thing to use. Me personally, I have a little area known as the Republic of Dave. It is in the northeast end of the map, and again, I don't want to give spoilers for it, but it's a small area that literally just is one dude named Dave who's created his own little society, and it's pretty awesome. I respect him.
Good for him taking that plot of land and carving out his own spot in what's left of America in the wasteland, I guess. So talking about, again, the environments, tell us a bit about how you do, like, combat within the game. I know it's got the VATS system, but just how does the environment feel? Is it sort of like a linear battle scenario? Do you get, like, flanking routes? What sort of areas are you moving through as you fight others and also interact with other people?
VATS is a big part of what all of this. This was the first time VATS was ever introduced, and for those not familiar, VATS is basically a point where you can slow or stop time and be able to pick individual parts of a person that you're going to attack. Now, it has advantages because you're going to get a much higher critical attack chance, which creates more damage, but it has disadvantages that it will always cause more damage to your weapons, which is much more expensive to repair and much deadlier, because if your weapon breaks in the middle of a battle, you're dead. It's pretty much simple as that. For the time, and even now, like it has aged slightly uncomfortably, but for the time, the battles always felt fluid. There was always interesting areas to go. May you be in a subway system, or you're in Upper DC. The final battle going into the Lincoln Memorial is just awesome, or the Jefferson Memorial, is just awesome. And you always have a wide range of enemies, so you really have to tailor your strategy depending on what those enemies are. If you're fighting an Enclave soldier, they tend to surround you really quickly, so you always have to be aware of it. Versus raiders will tend to run at you, or raiders will tend to run at you and be chasing you. And super mutants tend to just use brute force, and you can always expect them to be sneaking up on you. So that's something you kind of have to be aware. I find that the game makes you be more defensive than offensive quite often, if that makes sense. While saying that, you can still take the fight to the enemy, and you can still cause a lot of damage. So that's kind of the main way that I would describe it.
I think that summarizes it quite well. Talking about elements of being an RPG, obviously there is the skill system, and you can put into things. And when I play regular RPGs, I like to use a certain element of charisma and or smooth talking. So that kind of leads me to the point. Tell us a bit more about some of the skill systems, and also some of the characters and or the interactions that you can kind of have as you go about this wasteland meeting people.
Yeah, so obviously we have what Fallout's really well known for is its special system, which special is strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence. I'm forgetting what A is off the top of my head, and then luck. Just completely blank on A. A doesn't matter.
Isn't it agility?
Agility. Thank you. It's agility. Thank you. So the special system is kind of where you put where you mainly put your points, and then that can affect your gameplay going forward. So like if you put a lot of things into strength, you're usually going to have higher health. You're going to have higher melee damage. Versus if you put things into perception, you're usually going to have higher gun abilities abilities, more accuracy, stuff like that. And then going off of that, though, those points can influence the game so heavily. I apologize. I'm only answering half your question here. I want to make sure I get the second half there. If you'd be willing to repeat it.
Oh, the second half was, then taking those skill points. Tell us a bit about the people that you run into, some of the memorable characters, and some of the chats and stuff that you can do with these people.
This game had such an amazing cast, and like I briefly mentioned at the beginning, like Liam Neeson plays your father. That's one good character. There are a lot of big names that can go through, and I can't even name all of them off the top of my head right now. But like you go through this game and you'll be sitting there going like, oh man, I recognize that voice from Fallout 4 or Skyrim or Halo or anything like that. So it's pretty nice. Obviously, your father James is probably a massive character, and you chasing him down is always going to be a big part of the game. But there's characters that you encounter even really early on. Moriarty, who you encounter in Moriarty's Saloon in the very first town, usually the very first town people experience, which is Megaton, is a character that to me has always stayed with me a long time. Dr. Kim Lee is also a very big character that even transcends the game and goes into Fallout 4. You have all these little side characters, Amada and Billy, another big one, the famous tunnel snakes, which created a whole meme behind them. The snakes rule, which tunnel snakes do rule, so we're going to leave it at that. The way that you interact with them, like, it does feel very fluid, and there's so many dialogue options when you're talking to them. You do feel like you're creating a world around you as people become familiar with you, and then it actually passes over into the radio system, which the radio had just been introduced in here, and the radio is Galaxy News Radio, run by Three Dog. Wow, that works as the game goes on. He starts talking about your exploits, and if you've been super good, he'll start talking about how like great you are, and hey, our friend from Vault 101 has saved another city, or has done this great deed, or this, or if you've been really bad, he'll be like, bad news, everybody. The kid from Vault 101 burned down an orphanage. If you see him, we have to stop him. Like, it's so cool seeing how you affect the world around you, and that people completely change their tune, and their entire dialogue options will flat out be different after your actions.
No, that's great to have that kind of or insight there to that one. I was just gonna be like, what about the announcer?
Was getting to him. I wouldn't have left him behind.
Yeah, I was getting a little worried there. Everybody loves Three. So we'll continue along here. Obviously, you mentioned earlier the game has a selection of DLCs. I just want to briefly touch upon those and your thoughts on each of them, just for people that might be, they have the first game, they have the core game, I guess you could say, and they're looking at the DLC, and you would suggest any, kind of discussion you want to do around the DLC?
The DLC, there were some phenomenal parts of the DLC, and then there were some really weak parts. I personally feel that Operation Anchorage was weakest of all the DLC, but it gave you some of the best equipment, and you can do that thing pretty much right out of the vault. Like, you could be a level 2 and go and do that, and you basically have like max level equipment, game ending equipment, that you're done. Like, you don't have to upgrade yourself anymore. So that is one nice thing. But so you have 5 main DLC. Broken Steel was the biggest one, and that added 10 levels and an additional quest after the main game ends. So you finish the main game, you go and you basically have to take the fight to the Enclave. Wasn't anything too crazy, but it was a cool quest to finish off with. Operation Anchorage, obviously, that's you're actually going into a simulation, and you're going into the Chinese attack on Anchorage, Alaska, back 4 or 5 years before the bombs dropped, since this game takes place 200 years after the bombs. You have the Pit, which takes place in Pittsburgh, and you're in a slave camp trying to escape. And then there's Mothership Zeta, which you go to space and you fight aliens, and that was a fun one because pretty much every Fallout game has a hidden alien a hidden alien Easter egg, and it was nice to start seeing them actually say, oh yeah, the aliens are actually real. They're actually here, and it was a very fun DLC. And then our very last DLC. Okay. Yeah, Point Lookout. There we go. So Point Lookout is one of the most popular expansions, although it is also one of the most difficult. It's an entirely new land zone that is considerably open world in a area of Maryland, which was not directly hit by the bombs, but all the people there have become mutated through inbreeding because they couldn't escape. It's got a very interesting story, and there's even a couple really cool things that you can see, insights to what's going on in the world immediately after the bombs drop. So it's, if you like lore stuff, that's a really popular one.
Oh, well, I think that covers the DLC quite well. Thanks for basically recapping those elements of it. I guess for a more fun type of question, tell us an aspect or a part of Fallout 3 that really stays, kind of held in high regard with you, or a spot you really enjoy playing through.
I love the final walkthrough with Liberty Prime. I've actually got it as a save on my account, where I will go in and I will just keep playing that same part over and over. It's actually from my original character as well, the very first character I ever started back in 2008. It's just so fun to watch this giant robot spouting out American patriotism while shooting a giant laser and rockets at people. It's just so fun, and it's like a 15-minute segment of the game. Like, it's awesome.
So Fallout 3 at this point is, kind of a bit more aged. For those looking at this, what Fallout plays similarly to it, or if maybe they have played Fallout 3, is there another Fallout that you would suggest they go on to afterwards?
I would play it in order of release. Fallout 1 and 2 are still amazing, but if you enjoy the RPG elements, you're not a big turn-based player, because they are two completely different games in terms of genre. Fallout 3, then go on to New Vegas, which New Vegas is much, much, much better story-wise, but maybe not as good gameplay-wise, in my opinion, but that's tit for tat, essentially. And then go on to Fallout 4. Fallout 4 has a weaker story, but it has awesome customization. But yeah, I think Fallout 3 has the best atmosphere of any of the games, and it stands up even now. Like, it has aged, but it still stands up the test of time.
I mean, I think visually with the resolution improvement that it looks particularly good on the Series X, because
Absolutely.
we didn't necessarily talk about the visuals, but it does look really, really good, as I hope you've been seeing throughout our gameplay going on while we're chatting about it. I do think it looks really, really good, considering its age, with that boost in resolution that it got through the 1X enhancement that it's inheriting here. Now, I guess just for general wrap-up thoughts, let's do a quick summary. Just tell us, Fallout 3, why is it so important? Why is it so great?
I think Fallout 3 kind of revived a slightly struggling RPG genre. I don't think people really remember how much RPGs had kind of just fallen out of the way, because Halo and COD and Battlefield were kind of like dominating pretty hard when they came out. And I think Fallout 3, along, again, I mentioned before, with Mass Effect and with Oblivion, kind of started to revive that RPG love for a lot of people, and it did spawn a new series, because Fallout 3, even though it is the third game in the series, it is a different genre. It is an RPG story, and it created an entirely new series of games, which even to right now hold up very well and are quite enjoyable. And I think that they'll continue to hold up quite a long time. So it comes down to basically being like, if you were a fan of most people, at least, who are a fan of games like Skyrim and Mass Effect and those are usually the big ones. Dragon Age. They tend to be a big fan of Fallout as well.
Okay, well, thanks, Mitchell, for stopping by and talking about Fallout 3.
Thanks.
hang on, you're not one of them. I nearly blasted you in two. Get over here before they spot you.